what's up everyone? It's Emily and welcome back to my channel. So we are officially like over halfway through June, which means we are halfway through the year, which is absolutely insane. This year has been so crazy and so exciting at the same time. A lot has happened in my life over this past half a year. I'm just really happy that I can be here, and I'm really happy to be back on YouTube and making these fun videos for everyone. It has been so much fun being back, and so I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for being here, and thank you all so much for 300 subscribers. This is like beyond anything that I thought would happen with this little channel. I started it as just something for fun during the pandemic when I had nothing else to do and I was in a really dark place, and now life is just completely different and so exciting, and I'm so happy, and I'm very, very grateful for everyone who's here and who has been here even since the beginning. So it means the absolute world to me. So I wanted to do a mid-year check-in. I've never done one of these videos before, but I thought this would be super fun and a little bit of a way to kind of analyze the books that I've read so far this year and like what I have coming up for the rest of the year. So far this year, I've read 36 out of 50 books. That was like my goal for the year was 50. So I'm over halfway, like I'm quite a bit over halfway, which is so exciting. I hope I can read more than 50 books. That would that would blow my mind. So my goal was 50, I'm at 36. If I reach 50, which hopefully I will, I think my next goal will be 75, which sounds absolutely crazy to me, but that is going to be the goal. So to break down my star rating, I am just going with like rounding up. So even if it says like 4 stars, some of those were probably 3.5, but that's just like way too much breaking down. And honestly, I just didn't really want to do it. So of my 36 books I read so far this year, 20 of them have been 5-star reads. Now that does include 4.5 stars, obviously, but overall I have loved almost every book I've read this year. And I guess like that really shows that a lot of the books I've been reading I've really loved. I've been really passionate about a lot of them, and I have been wanting to share them all with you. So I hope I've been okay at doing that. I had 12 4 stars or 3.5, and I only had 3 at 3 stars, and then 1 2-star, and then 0 1-star reviews or like books that I've read. But I saved 1 stars for books that I've DNF'd. So basically what that means is that like I haven't DNF'd a book this year, which is, I'm really proud of myself because I don't like DNFing books. I will do it if a book just like doesn't really seem worth my time, but I really do try to power through books. And if I feel like a book is just not hitting at the right moment, because I'm very much a mood reader, I will just set it down and I will come back to it and I'll just kind of read it slowly if I think the book is still worth pursuing. But if the book is just completely not for me and like I don't even think it's worth finishing, or if I'm reviewing it for an author or something like that, I will still finish it and give it a star rating. And my 1 2-star read was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I know this book is like beloved by some people, but this book was just it was just not for me. And reading a lot of the stuff in like the reviews of like other Sally Rooney books, I don't think any of her books would be for me, and I challenge anyone to change my mind. I did like a whole like 10-minute rant on this book, and I am too scared to post it, but that was my 2-star read for the year. So of these 36 books, 8 of them were advanced reader copies that I received through NetGalley. 4 of them were graphic novels. They were all the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. And 15 of them had LGBT rep. And now we will go over to my story graph to see all of the beautiful representations of the books I have read so far this year. So I have my notes here because I don't have it like up because I'm recording on my phone. So according to Storygraph, the moods that I read the most were emotional, adventurous, mysterious, and lighthearted, which I would say is very true. The pacing of the books I read, 64% of them were medium paced, 28% were fast paced, and 8% were slow. I also would agree with that. Like, I think medium paced books is like where I thrive, where you know, it gives us enough time to reflect on the characters and get to know them, but like the plot is still moving fairly quickly to like keep my attention. Because slow-paced books just like cannot hold my attention long enough for me to like want to finish it. If the characters and the world is compelling enough, I will still read it, but slow-paced books, like, they tend to bore me to tears. So by page number, the most common books pages amounts that I read was between 300 and 499. That was 74% of them. And then 16% had less than 300 pages, and then 11% were over 500 pages. And yeah, that sounds pretty typical as well. I read, you know, they're not teeny tiny books normally, but I read a lot of like fairly long books and then a couple really long books. But yeah, they mainly stay in that like 300 to 400, I would say. 97% of the books I read this year were fiction and 3% were nonfiction. I would like to change that if possible. I love fiction, and fiction is definitely where I thrive, and that's like where my love of reading comes from, is reading fiction and fantasy. But it is one of my goals to read more nonfiction, if not the rest of this year, next year. There are some really awesome nonfiction books that I have been wanting to read. My nonfiction book that I'm reading right now is The Tao of Pooh and The Tale of Piglet, and I've been enjoying it so far. It's philosophy seen through the lens of Winnie the Pooh, which really enthralled me, and I am enjoying it a lot, and I love the style of the work, but it is a bit slow paced, so I'm kind of just reading it a little by little. I also want to read Sapiens by the end of the year, because that one just sounds absolutely fascinating, and I love history. If possible, I want to read a book on the witch trials at some point. And I don't know, probably something else also historically related. Like, I love reading books about history. So I would like to read some more nonfiction, but definitely fiction is where I thrive the most. And then my most popular genres were YA, LGBT, fantasy, contemporary, romance, and sci-fi. And that is 100% like me as a reader can be wrapped up in those genres. So definitely correct. So I want to go through all the books. I'm not going to go in depth by any means about any of these books. Starting with my 2-star read, I talked about this a little bit before, but the one 2-star read I had so far this year is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This book was just like not it for me. And according to like all of the reviews, I don't think any of her books will be it for me. So yeah, that one, it was just a swing and a miss. I wanted to like it. I thought I would. I bought it in Amsterdam thinking it would be like my new favorite read of the year, and it hit so low. So I'm really sorry if you guys like that book. If you love it, more power to you. It's just not for me. So moving to 3-star reads, I read Artemis by Andy Weir. This is his third book. Well, it was the second book he wrote before Project Hail Mary, and it takes place on the moon, which was awesome. And I really like this book. I just think the plot kind of like fell short for me, and I didn't really like the way he wrote his female characters, but yeah, it was okay. But that one was 3 stars. I also read Passenger, and this one was about time-traveling pirates, which the concept was amazing. I think I would continue the series. There was just like, I don't know, the plot was a little bit confusing, so it fell a little bit short for me, but I loved the concept of it, and I really liked the magic and the world of it. I just didn't think the characters were super interesting, and I think overall, I just really wanted more from it. The next 3-star book I read was The Crimes of Croswald. I think this one technically was 2.5. This one, I had a publisher reach out to me to read for an author as an ARC, and it just wasn't for me. Honestly, people will love it. It just wasn't for me. I do have like a full review for all of my ARCs on my Goodreads, so if you do want to check those out, I will have my Goodreads and my Storygraph linked down below. Moving on to 4-star reads, I read the Heartstopper graphic novels by Alice Oseman, and I put them all at 4 stars because they just, I don't know what it is, they just like weren't 5 stars for me. It was really well done. I loved the art style, I loved the characters, but I just think I was missing a bit of like emotional depth, and I think that's just a common thing for me with graphic novels for whatever reason, and I loved everything about it, but it was missing something for me, and I can't put my finger on what. But so I gave them all 4 stars, which they're amazing, and I suggest them to people all the time. I just think for me, I wanted more, and that's okay. I also read If This Gets Out by Sophie Gonzalez. This was for the Bi Book Club. It's about a boy band where 2 of the boys kind of fall in love, and they have to deal with the fact that they're not allowed to be out to their fans, and dealing with all of the backlash that comes with being gay or bi in the music industry. This one was not 5 stars for me only because I just thought it was a little bit too long. Like, it just kind of felt like it dragged in the middle. And I think if it had been like 100 pages shorter, it would have been a lot better for me as a reader. Like, I know some people that doesn't really bother as much, but it was just kind of dragging and I had a hard time kind of getting through the middle of it. But other than that, like, I really loved the characters. I thought it was very realistic. I really love Sophie Gonzalez is one of my favorite authors, and her and Cale Diedrich like did a really great job. And I have never read a book with a boy band as like the main characters, and like it was really good. So I loved this one. My next 4-star read was Booked on a Feeling. This was an ARC book I was requested to review, and I really liked this one. This one I think is actually 3.5, but I loved the setting of it and I really liked the characters, but again, it was just kind of lacking emotionally for me. I didn't really have an emotional connection to the characters, and like, it was a very cute romance and I would definitely recommend it to people who read a lot of romance, but just for me, it just kind of it was good. It just wasn't amazing for me. The next one was Truly Devious, and this one I really loved. It was dark academia, a mystery kind of thriller. I loved the setting and I did like the main character. I just think what makes something 5 stars for me is when I have a very clear emotional reaction to the book where I feel so invested in it that I have this response to the text that I didn't with this one. So even though it was good and the plot was great, I just was lacking the emotional connection for me as a reader that I want out of a 5-star read. And the next book is kind of the same. So that's The Dream Key. This is the second book in the God Sage series by Rachel Watson. And I liked this one. I gave the first one 5 stars. I'll talk about that shortly. But for this one, I just thought, like, as the second book in a series, I was hoping it would ramp up a bit more and be more exciting in the plot. And I think it was just lacking for me plot-wise in terms of ramping up for the third book in the series. Sometimes that just happens with second books. Like, honestly, the only series I can think of where like the second book is better than the first is the Hunger Games trilogy for me. But in spite of that, I still liked the characters. I like Rachel's writing and I love helping out small authors. But again, I was missing that kind of like emotional reaction from myself as a reader. The next one I had was The Sleepless, which is another ARC book that I got from NetGalley, and more of the same. So this book was just not really what I was expecting it to be based on when I was reading what the plot was. And yeah, I talked about this one a lot in my, I think, wrap up of March or something like that. And yeah, I wanted more, but it was okay. My next 4-star was Henry Hamlet's Heart, which I think is another 3.5. This one, yeah, I just didn't really care about the characters, but it was still a good story and a good queer story. So like, people who just love reading queer stories. This one had kind of Heartstopper vibes, but I did not like the love interest whatsoever. If people like a emotionally unavailable love interest in their romance, like, there you go. This one would be perfect for you. My next 4-star was Rebel Rose. This book is a Beauty and the Beast sequel where if Belle and the Beast lived in our history, so during like the French Revolution. So this had some political intrigue, a little bit of a mystery to it. I thought that the author retained the voices of the original characters from the Disney movie very well. I know there are some people who don't think that, but like, for me, it was fine. I just wish the plot had a little bit more juice to it, but obviously it was like kind of a YA book for younger readers, and I did still really enjoy it. And the last book that was 4 stars for me was Iron Widow. This was a highly anticipated read for me this year, and I'm so happy I got to read it, and I cannot wait for the sequel. I love a good revenge story. I thought that this book kind of had a little bit of everything. We had like this badass main character and a little bit of romance. It's like a futuristic sci-fi, but the world is based around ancient China. Like, it was really cool. I really loved the world. I really like the author's writing style. I know some people didn't really love it, but for me, I thought it really worked. I think for me, I just wanted more from the side characters. Our main character was so angry the whole book, and yet she was in love with these other people. I don't want to like give anything away. Like, why this person? Like, what did this person do? And maybe I just missed it and I glossed over it when I was reading, but like, I was just kind of missing that softer side to the main character that kind of foils with her angry vengefulness. So that was just for me, but I cannot wait for the sequel, and I hope it is just as good. And now finally, our 5-star reads for the first half of the year. The first 5-star read I read this year was A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. I love this duology so much. If you've been following my channel, you know that. If you've been following the By Book Club, you know that. We read this one for the By Book Club, and it blew me out of the water. It answered every question you had in the first book. I love Hank's writing style. I love his characters. I love April May. It's a sequel, so I'm not going to talk about the plot like at all, but like if you are looking for a kind of contemporary new adult sci-fi duology that is completely unique in itself, or if you just like love Hank Green and like that kind of comedy and personality, like just please pick this one up. 10 out of 10, one of my favorite series of all time. My next 5-star read is Forbidden Healing by Rachel Watson, which is the first one in the God's Age series. I read this one and it got me out of a reading slump, which I think is one of the reasons why it's rated so highly. I just thought it was a really easy to get into fantasy with a really awesome concept. It like really brought me into the world, so I gave this one 5 stars. The next I read was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I'm a huge fan of Gaiman's work. I love his prose. I think he is an excellent storyteller, and this one was no different. I read this one even on audiobook, and like the fact that I was so transported into it through an audiobook for me says a lot, because normally like I cannot get into audiobooks, and this one he read it himself and I was just like, I was so in it. My next 5-star read was Only Pieces, which I received as an ARC. This one I kind of feel like I need to reread because it was so short and I read it so fast, and I feel like I need to reabsorb emotionally. Like I swear it's less than 200 pages and I cried like for 3/4 of it. So it was very emotionally compelling. The story was so beautiful, and just wow. If you love poetry and you want like a quick read that's going to be very emotional, like this one. Next I read Project Hail Mary, which is the 3rd book written by Andy Weir. And I gotta say, this one is my new favorite. Like, I thought The Martian could not be beat, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this one. It's a little bit different. He blew it out of the park, and I cannot tell you anything about this plot, really, because it will ruin the experience for you. You love space, astronauts, or like even just like mysteries, thrillers, like even if you don't like science or you don't understand science, like Andy does a really good job breaking it down so that like anyone can read it and have a decent understanding of what's going on. I cannot get over how much I love this book. And I know they're making it into a movie starring Ryan Gosling, so like if you are gonna watch the movie, please read this book. It's incredible. Next I read On Writing by Stephen King. This one took me forever to get through. It was a nonfiction kind of memoir / writing advice book. I think for what it is, like, it was really well done. I thought he had some great advice in there. I know it doesn't resonate with everyone because everyone's different and everyone's writing style and method is different, but I thought it was really cool to hear from Stephen King himself, who has written, I don't know, like 1 billion books. I thought it was really interesting to hear how he writes and his process and like what it was like for him to get into writing, and how, you know, I just thought that was interesting. He's such a well-known author. Like everyone has at least seen a Stephen King book or a movie adaptation of one of his books. Even though I don't read a ton of his stuff, I think hearing about it was just so interesting, and hearing about his life was just very different. So I gave that one 5 stars. Next I read Legendborn, which, oh, this was definitely a top favorite of the year. This is gonna contend for like one of my top reads. I freaking loved this book. It took me a bit to get into it. This beginning was kind of slow. We really had to set up this world, and then I didn't really understand exactly what was happening like magic wise for a lot of it, and then it clicked for me, and then I couldn't put it down. So like I just could not get over how much I loved the characters. I thought it was so interesting. I really cared about all the characters. This book made me tear up a lot. So, and that's, you know, for me, that's a 5-star read. It's like the author did their job. So I have emotionally connected and I care about these characters and like what they're going through. Next, I read A Magic Steeped in Poison, which this is going to be one of my top books of the year. The sequel is coming out soon. I tried to get an arc of it, but I think they already gave out all of their arcs, which bummed me out. This book was amazing. I drank so much tea while reading this book. I loved the story, the world, the magic system, everything about it. So this one was like a no-brainer, like 5 stars. The next one I have is This Poison Heart, which the sequel just came out like last week. And this one was amazing. I don't know what I was expecting going into it, but I thought it was so well done. And the magic was just so beautiful in my mind, and the story and its relevance to Greek mythology while not being a Greek retelling was like incredible. The next I read was Queen's Shadow, which is a Star Wars novel, and I like didn't really know what to expect from this one because we're following Padme Amidala like while she's getting into the Senate, and I loved it. I know a lot of people don't, because when they think of Star Wars, they want like the blaster fights or like lightsaber duels and everything. And this is a much more like political book. It's about like Padme's life and like what she's doing in the political sphere of Star Wars before Attack of the Clones. But like, I found that so fascinating. I think Padme is such an underrated character, and like the more I can learn about her, the better. Like, I think she was so underused in the movies, like by far. So like this for me was really great, and I want to read the rest of the trilogy. My next 5-star read was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and oh, this book reminded me why I love Sanderson. His storytelling and like the way that he can create these worlds so three-dimensionally and like still catch you by surprise every single time is just unmatched. Like it's so well done, and because this one is technically YA, like it was so much easier to get through than some of his larger, more like prose heavy books. I didn't have to work as hard to understand what was going on versus like when I'm reading Stormlight. And I loved Spensa. Like, she's one of my new favorite protagonists ever, and like I'm already planning my reread of this book, even though I still have to finish the series. Like, but this one was just, oh, it was so good. The next one I read was Hotel Magnifique. I did a full review on this book, so I'm gonna keep it short. I loved the characters, I loved the world, I loved the magic. So beautiful. If you love Caraval, you will love this book. Next I read How to Excavate a Heart, which is coming out in November. This was an arc I got from NetGalley, and oh my god, it was so good. This one is, again, going to be in one of my top books. The way people have been describing it and the way I'm going to describe it now, because I have not heard a better way yet, is it's a sapphic Jewish Hallmark movie featuring a corgi. So, like, that's all you need to know. So when it comes out, go buy it. The next one I read was The Secret Life of Albert Entwistle, which was... it reminds me of, like, if a man called Ova was gay and looking for the love of his life. That's kind of how like the writing style reminds me so much of Frederick Bachman's, and we center around an old man who is kind of lost in the world, and he goes on the hunt for the love of his life that he never had because he is still in the closet even though he's 65, and the boy that he was in love with he hasn't seen in like 40 or 50 years. Like, oh my gosh. So it's like his journey to finding him. It was incredible. I cried. So it started out really slow for me, and I thought it was going to be 3 stars, and then by the end I was sobbing, so 5. It was 5. Next book I read was Ahsoka, also written by E.K. Johnston, and this book was so good. If anything, I really thought the plot was lacking, but Ahsoka is my favorite character in like the whole Star Wars universe. I loved getting to hear like what she had been up to, like between the gaps of her story. I thought E.K. Johnston did a really good job maintaining Ahsoka's voice and adapting it to a novel, and I really hope they come out with another one at some point because I would love another Ahsoka novel. What I read was Improbable Magic for Cynical Witches. I have a whole review of this one. It's another arc that's coming out soon, if not already, and it takes place in Salem, Massachusetts. This one was absolutely adorable. If you like tarot cards or the Fool's Journey, like this one is kind of based with that in mind, so I thought that was really cool, and I loved this book. The next 5-star I had was Bitter, and this one I didn't know was like a prequel to Pet. I thought it was just like separate, so I feel like I missed certain things about it, but I still enjoyed it so much I gave it 5 stars. Like, this kind of revolutionary world where, you know, you have the fighters and then you have the artists, and, you know, being able to create art in a world that is so broken, and how important it is to have art in that world. Like, it was just so beautiful and so well done and very powerful, and I loved the cover of it. It was so beautiful. So yeah, this one was 5 stars. Next I have Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. This one was such a quick, fun read. I finally got around to reading it. This is the queer book that like a lot of people think of when they think of like maybe the first gay book that they've ever read, and I had never read it up until now, and I'm so glad I did. This book kind of seems like it was the beginning of like all of the other YA queer romances that come after it. The next 5-star read I have is She Gets the Girl. I just finished this one recently, and oh, it was so cute. Like, if you love kind of the like opposites attract kind of books, but not like Grumpy Sunshine, just more like, you know, someone who's very extroverted and someone who's really introverted. I really related to one of the main characters. It takes place on a college campus. And I don't know, I just think overall this, like, the romance in this was absolutely adorable, and I cannot get over it. It was just so cute. If you just want like a fun summer sapphic read, I'm gonna recommend this to like everyone. And the 2 authors are wives. Like, I thought that was just a nice little extra cherry on top. It was just, I loved this book. And the last book I've read for my first half of the year was The Atlas Six. So this one was, I don't know, it kind of subverted my expectations, and like I gave it 5 stars based on like vibes alone because I loved the dark academia vibes of it. I heard so much about it. It was a little bit overhyped, I think, but I still gave it 5 stars because I thought that it was still so intriguing. I think technically this one sat at about 4.5 for me. I loved all the different characters and how like they were all kind of morally gray in their own way. And I loved the setting for it and the magic, and I really liked the way that the author described the world around them. It was a very diverse book as well, which was really awesome. I think just for me, it was a lot more character-based than plot-based, and I was not expecting that, so it was a lot slower than I thought it was going to be, which honestly made it a bit hard for me to get through, but I did, and I'm really glad I did because I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out this year. So those are all 36 of the books I've read so far this year. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. This is a fairly long video, and I'm so sorry. I have really enjoyed reading all these books. So many of them were like just so wonderful, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to read so much this year. And I cannot wait to see like what the rest of the year brings, because like I think my goal is definitely to hit 50, and I want to get through most of the books I have left on my shelf, and I want to read some more arcs, and once I get through the books on my shelf, I think I want to focus on more arcs and doing more reviews like that, and then also working on my own book. I have really enjoyed reading all these books. I hope the rest of the year goes smoothly. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much as always for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.